spite of what we saw on the screen, perhaps we could all turn off our cell phones? It's a gentle reminder, and I'd like to thank Dr. Bakken's daughter, Angela, for a beautiful slideshow. There we go. And I am Sheryl Fontaine. I'm the Dean of the College of Humanities and Social Sciences, and I welcome you all here today. I also bring greetings from our president, Mildred Garcia, and the provost, Jose Cruz, who regret that they couldn't be here today. They're representing the university in Washington, D.C. at the AACU conference. I invite all of us right now to take any burdens or distractions that we brought with us and leave them behind, and fill our hearts and minds right now with the memories of the stories and discussions, the conversations, the laughter that we all shared with Dr. Bakken. Looking at the faces in this room and at the faces that we saw on the screen, it's clear that Gordon Bakken was a friend, a colleague, a mentor, a teacher, a scholar who touched many lives for many generations and will continue to do so. I'd now like to introduce our hostess for this afternoon's celebration, the Chair of the Department of History, Nancy Fitch.
Try to stand over here a little bit so I don't get buried by this extra large podium here. I'd like to welcome and thank all of you for joining us in this sad and wonderful occasion of celebrating a life very well lived of our friend Gordon Bakken. Pictures make me kind of choke up a little bit. It's sad. All those fortunate enough to know Gordy personally were impressed by his quirky humor and his inexhaustible vitality. Right up until the end, he was on campus doing research for his next book. In the library, coming to the history department. Truly amazing. In thinking of Gordy these past few months, everything seems to revolve around hats. He wore many of them, a lot of them on his head. You could spot him a mile away by his hat. Mostly his Stetson hats, but as you saw in some of those pictures, he wasn't unknown to show up with a baseball cap, especially turned backwards, like that one too. He kept different hats in his office for different occasions. You knew something was really special when he had his dress black hat on. On other occasions, he wore different hats. He wore many hats in life as well, as you could see from the various images. He was a college professor, a mentor to hundreds of students and colleagues, a friend, a family member. He chaired church services and Bible studies with people. He was a drinking buddy, a soccer coach, a Little League coach, a manuscript reader, a promoter of young faculty, especially young women faculty in many departments, not just the history department. He was a conference participant, a Phi Alpha Theta booster, a chef who specialized in elk balls and elk brats. He was a deer hunter par excellence, and the author of more books than most of the history department put together. I could fill pages just listing the many hats he wore, but I'll stop here. As I imagine Gordy is probably up there looking down on us and saying something that I'm cribbing from a poet, Robert Henshaw. But this is, I think, what Gordy would be saying right now. I don't want you fellas carrying on and belligerent when I'm gone. Just say a few kind words. Get back in the saddle and carry on. And that was always his expression. Get back in the saddle. We have teachers to mentor, and we have lots of books that need to be written, even today. So I think we'll try our best to carry on without our dear friend, but at the moment I just want to say hats off to you, my friend. And thank you for sharing your life. Words on details. We have, as you can see from the beautiful program, we have a few people who are going to speak, and then we're going to open it up for others to share. We hope you keep your remarks a little bit limited, and I brought my energy chimes here. If you go on too long, I'll gong them and send energy to Gordy, but I'm hoping that just the threat of them will keep you down to a few minutes. Thank you. And I'm sorry. I would like to introduce the former chair of the history department and one of Gordy's closest friends in the department, Jochen Burgtorf.
I thought I was going to hold it together until Angela showed these pictures, so I will do my best. On Sunday, January the 10th, 1943, at 8:05 local time, the Soviet military under the command of General Rokossovsky launched Operation Koltso, the final attack on the Third Reich's 6th Army at Stalingrad, with an hour of deafening artillery bombardment. That very same day, on Sunday, January 10th, 1943, and I assume with a slightly less deafening cry of a baby boy, Lord Morris Bakken was born on the other side of the globe in Madison, Wisconsin. Since Stalingrad is 8 or 9 hours ahead of Madison, the cannons that thundered that day on the Volga's western bank did not just herald the end of the German 6th Army, they also welcomed into the world my friend Gordon with a big bang. Military historians live for the drama of the narrative. And I used to tease Gordon with the fact that his arrival on planet Earth coincided with an epic disaster for my people, the Germans. Gordon's response, is that why I'm paying for your beverage? Since he was almost a quarter century my senior, I cannot tell you what Gordon was up to when he was a child, a teenager, or a young adult, probably no good. He received his bachelor's degree in 1966, the year before I was born, his master's degree the following year, his PhD when I was in kindergarten, and his JD when I was a first grader. And all these degrees hailed from the University of Wisconsin at Madison. Of course, he might have guessed that his path would lead him to California because historians are always drawn to the sources. And the likeness of the very badger that is the official mascot of the University of Wisconsin had allegedly been created in 1940 by one Art Evans of Garden Grove, California, just down the street. Bucky Badger t-shirts were almost as much a hallmark of Gordon's apparel as was his cowboy hat. And I used to tease him that we Germans had a response to his beloved badger. The German word for badger is Dachs, and my people once upon a time bred the Dachshund, the badger hound, to hunt badgers. Gordon's response, the next round is on you and I will select the beverage. The first member of the Cal State Fullerton Titan family I ever met was, well, Gordon. In December 2000, I got an email from Gera Brunel that I had been selected as a possible candidate for the job I have today. She told me that the respective job interview at the annual meeting of the American Historical Association would take place in the Bakken suite of a certain historic hotel. A few weeks later, I knocked on a hotel room door in Boston, and it was opened by you-know-who, cowboy hat and all. While he was not on my actual interview committee, his was the first Fullerton hand I shook. A few months later, I found myself in the backyard, in his backyard, for the history department's fall party, where I was welcomed as a new faculty colleague. And within a year, even though I never used a grading scale from A to double P minus, or, for that matter, a collection of stamps that graced many a paper that is now treasured like the Holy Grail. The students had coined a nickname for Professors Bakken, Brunel, and Burgtorf, the 3 killer bees. My reaction, this is distinguished company to be sure, but I think it lacks gravitas. Gordon's response, I think we should do a t-shirt. Gordon loved books. He was a regular at the Huntington. He appeared to have entire bibliographies memorized, and his personal libraries were extensive. After all, he was a scholar of legal, constitutional, environmental, Western, military, women's, and then some history. He loved books, and every student who ever took a Bakken class knows this, for he assigned them by the truckload. And those students who completed his courses were therefore considered duly Bakkenized. In fact, Gordon loved books so much that he himself wrote or edited well over 20 of them, including such catchy titles as Women Who Kill Men or An Invitation to an Execution, many co-written with current or former students or with colleagues, and at least 9 produced in collaboration with his wife, Brenda Farrington. One of the last manuscripts Gordon worked on was A Buck in the Truck, the impact of big game hunting on the American West. Gordon was an avid hunter, so he would have known what he was writing about. I remember him returning from one of his hunting trips to Montana, and so my wife Libby and I got together with him and Brenda to hear his latest war stories. And we were in for a treat. Gordon regaled us with an epic hunter's tale, how he had been thrown by a mule with the innocent name of Buttercup, and had broken several ribs. I wish I could remember the joke I cracked right afterwards, because it made him laugh so hard that he cried. Right about then, a huge cockroach surfaced on the wall of the restaurant where we had just finished eating. Gordon's response, once he had regained his composure, it's time to get a gun. There are many things I love about Gordon. He talked about his family with such pride and joy. I had heard stories about Angela and Elwood, about his travels in Germany with Erica, and about Brenda long before I ever met them. He delighted in his Viking and Lutheran heritage. He was an avid promoter of our campus ROTC. He introduced me to Phi Alpha Theta and to Jack Tunstall, and the rest is history. He was incredibly generous with his time, his resources, and his many talents, which included, to just name 3 that I have not mentioned so far, refereeing soccer, cooking, and always in good humor imitating foreign accents, including those of Professor Sun and Burgtorf. Gordon was not impressed with political correctness, or, for that matter, campus policies, or facilities that, in his opinion, stood in the way of learning. Thus, for years he conducted his seminars in the restaurant of the Fullerton Marriott, often accompanied by food and always accompanied by drink. And it was not until a group of administrators, none of whom are still in office today, shut this practice down, that he relocated his courses to our also bland, windowless, and usually dilapidated classrooms. Generations of our students learned at the Fullerton Marriott, and as Gordon liked to say, knowledge was increased. Now, for those of you who are not Christians, this next penultimate thought will be over in just about 60 seconds. One of the things Gordon and I shared was our faith in Christ. Gordon took his faith very seriously. He was a bearer of grace, as many of his students found out eventually when they received their final grades, or when he read the umpteenth draft of their master's thesis. And he studied the Bible with diligence. There's no doubt in my mind that it was also his faith, in addition to the loving care of his family, that sustained him last fall. Because he firmly believed that this life is not all there is. Those of you who know your Bible, and the footnote here reads Daniel 7 and Revelation 20, also know at least one reason why Gordon was looking forward to heaven. There are books there that contain everything. So when I think of Gordon these days, I imagine him conducting an oral history with Junipero Serra Ferrer one of California's 18th century Franciscan missionaries, who, as we have just learned from the Vatican, is about to be canonized, which really should not be done without an oral history conducted by a Lutheran and proper scholarly research. And so I return to Sunday, January 10th, 1943. But this time not to Stalingrad and not to Madison, Wisconsin, but rather to South Philadelphia, where on that very same day the future American singer-songwriter Jim Croce was born. Arguably his most famous song, a #1 hit, contains these lines. If I could save time in a bottle, the first thing that I'd like to do is to save every day till eternity passes away, just to spend them with you. If I could make days last forever, if words could make wishes come true, I'd save every day like a treasure, and then again I would spend it with you. But there never seems to be enough time to do the things you want to do once you find them. Gordon has left us with a wonderful legacy, a legacy of hard work, of grace, of investment in and dedication to the success of others, of community, of great humor, of elk meatballs and hookers, of life lived to the fullest, of friendship, and of love. May we strive to make him proud. It is now my pleasure and honor to introduce Dr. Jack Tunstall, the Executive Director of Phi Phi Theta.
Professor Gordon M. Bakken was my special friend for decades. Gordo, I'm Jacko, brought me laughter too often to count at times. He also challenged me. We pushed each other to do and be better people. He and I appreciated and valued our special friendship. Needless to say, we had incredible memories. Professor Bakken walked my wife down the aisle. His wife, Erica, at the time, was the maid of honor. You saw a picture of my beautiful wife up there. He helped her pick out her wedding dress. My son, Alan, called him Uncle Gordo. Alan is often referred to as a wine snob with his friends. That's because of his dear uncle. Alan treasures all the times he shared with both Gordo and me and his private conversations. There were times I think he would have traded me for Gordo. Gordo went to his wedding. Gordo happened to have a bottle of bourbon. My son was bucked up for the wedding, and one of the gentlemen in his entourage fainted. Professor Bakken and I always met the night before a convention, special historical convention. We always had a nice dinner, then retired to my room or his room. It was west of the Mississippi. Gordon bought bourbon. It was east of the Mississippi. I bought it. It could be Booker's. Imagine that. Or Maker's Mark. I like that. And it was always 1 hour to drink it, and only with ice. We discussed Phi Alpha Theta business, our lives, and by the time we were finished, it solved all the world's problems. At least till we stood up. Angela, one of his favorite topics, and for you young ladies, was when he refereed the soccer games. He always talked about that and loved it. Now I'm going to talk about Gordon Bakken's inestimable contribution to Phi Alpha Theta. Professor Bakken was one of our most influential and highly effective supporters. When he and I met, we simply clicked. We both talked military history. I tell him war stories about the Vietnam era. We had a lot of things in common. But in particular, I took over Phi Alpha Theta at a time that the organization was almost bankrupt from my predecessor. So Gordon and I formed an alliance. At the verge of it going out of business,